All right, welcome everybody to our introductory unit on Google SketchUp for robotics. We're going to be modeling, showing you how to create some models for components that you may want to 3D print and add to your robot. So let's get quickly started here. Here is SketchUp. It's a great tool. It was primarily designed for architectural modeling, but has been since used for a lot of different things that we can do some pretty basic, pretty quick 3D prints from this. There are many other tools out there for modeling for more advanced stuff if you'd like to get into it, but I find this a great intro level one for you. Now, let's do a quick little tour of the environment. In the middle here is where we do all our drawing and modeling. If you've got a mouse with a mouse wheel, this is best here because you can zoom in and out with the mouse wheel. Notice that you will zoom in to what you're pointing at and zoom out there. If you middle click that mouse wheel, this will allow you to what's called the orbit tool quickly, which is to look around at your object in your 3D world, in your 3D space. And if you hold down shift and you click that middle mouse wheel, this will let you pan up and down, left and right to be able to look at different angles and move things around a little bit. So there's your quick little orientation. Down the left-hand side, we've got a bunch of tools here. Right-hand side, we've got some kind of custom settings and some other stuff. Mostly we're not going to be using, but we will look at a few of those ideas. I want you to notice the three lines here. We've got a red, blue, and green. What are they called? The axes. You'll be familiar with this from math class. Usually this would be your x-axis, your y-axis, and in the 3D world, we have a z-axis, which comes off at a 90 degrees. It's kind of hard to show properly 3D space on a 2D screen, but that's kind of how we've made it work there. And as if you rotate around, you'll see it moves. We've chosen colors rather than letters because you'll often be flipping around in different angles, and then you got to ask yourself, well, is that the x-axis and that the y-axis and that's the z, or which is which as you change. So we stick with these colors so it's always easily identifiable which direction we're looking. All right, let's start quickly building. We're going to start off with these first, say, 5 tools here, which will help us out. I'm going to start with my favorite here, which is the rectangle tool. This allows me to draw rectangles, surprisingly. You'll also notice as I move around, the color of my little rectangle changes. So right now I'm blue, which means I'm going to go 90 degrees to the blue axis. So if I draw this, just click and drag, you'll see I get a little flat rectangle that's flat on the ground. However, if I orient this up a little bit, we can also get one in the green axis. And if I rotate over here, you can see that I can get one in the red axis. These are our 3 kind of planes here. And how it works is SketchUp's trying to help you out by kind of drawing in the orientation that you're looking. So I'm looking mostly in the green direction here, so it turns green. I'm looking mostly in the red direction here, so it turns red. And I'm looking down mostly in the blue direction, so it turns blue. If I'm kind of halfway between, you can see as I move up from blue to green, it will switch its angle for you. Second tool is my selection tool here. This allows me to click on things or click on a number or drag and select a number of things. And if I just hit delete on the keyboard, they go away. So clean that up there. And let's start with just a little square on the ground like I did in the blue. If you want to draw something like that or give it a try. And let's move on to our next tool because this is really for 3D modeling, not 2D. And you can see we have a 2D shape right here. But we can take any 2D face and turn it into 3Ds by using my next tool here, which is the push-pull tool. And it's got a little arrow moving up like that. What this does is as you move over a face like this rectangle, I can click and drag and it will do what's called extrude or pull or push it down to kind of create. Now I've got this 3D cube, which is great. And after the fact, I can then push, pull faces. I can drag them and move them to any kind of size or shape that I want. You can see. Um, it will move an existing one or extrude a two-dimensional shape if I want. I can also, now that I've got this, you'll notice drag and create a face or a shape on a face. And then I can push or pull that in these different directions to create the exact kind of thing that I'm looking for. You will notice as I draw as well, it always wants to kind of stick to a face. So now that I've got these faces here, you can see as I move around, it will create in the orientation of the face that I'm looking at. So if I go here, I'm creating a face on there, create a face in this green direction. And then I can also push and pull, grab that push pull in any of these directions to create that kind of shape. And you can see how we're starting to build some little Lego-like structure. Here, again, if I want to get rid of something, I can always click on it and hit delete. Now that's actually put a hole into my 3D shape like that. Which can be useful for some designing, but generally we don't want hollow things in 3D world. We need some kind of dimension there. Here, this is a two-dimensional shape, so I can't actually print this because this has no width. So I'm going to select all of that stuff and click delete so we can start off from scratch again there. So again, let me make a little cube square, pull it into a cube, and now we've got our 3D shape again as well. So I wanted to look at a couple other little tools here. The next tool is our line tool. This allows me to draw a line. In general, drawing lines off of things, not recommended because again, this is a two-dimensional shape. But if I were to finish this off and continue it, I could create that kind of 3D shape there. What I wanted to look at was being able to, say, draw lines from one part to another. In this case, I've drawn this little cube, or this little triangle at the edge here. And if I then grab my push-pull, you can see that I could step this down. I could pull something up or push it down to start to create, little nooks and crannies and wedges and things for putting things together. And you can see we can very quickly start to create some interesting looking shapes. Whenever we've got a face there, we can push or pull it down to extrude or to subtract some things. One last thing with my push-pull, let's grab that. I'm going to put a square right here on this face. We've already seen that we can push inwards or we can pull outwards, but we can also, if we push through and we go and line up to the back side, you can see it wants to snap to that face. If I push right through and meet up with the back face there, what I'll have done is create a hole right through something, which is great. Idea there. So one more time, if I create, say, a little shape here, use my push-pull tool, that will allow me, if I go all the way down and it will snap onto the backside, you can see I could keep on going if I want, but if I snap onto the backside, then I've created a hole. It will delete that face there. Now, one thing you need to be cautious of as you're doing something like this is if you, say, grab that, I'll make a little face there. And I push all the way through. We've got an area that's coming out the back here, and this is a pretty common problem that beginners fall into. What I want you to notice is the color difference here. So mostly as we move around, other than when it's shaded or in the shadow, if I go up like that, but you can see most of the time the surfaces here are this white kind of surface. Notice this surface, however, is this kind of bluey gray kind of color, and it doesn't matter how I look at it, it will never turn white. It's always this bluey gray. Um, this you have to be careful of because this is actually the inside of the shape. So I've kind of turned this thing through itself and pushed it to the inside. And you can see this if I say click this surface here and I delete, you can see the insides are all that bluey gray. And when you're designing and just looking at something, that's not really that important, the colors of it, especially if you're going to color it afterwards. But SketchUp needs to know, and our 3D model needs to know what's the outside and what's the inside of something for when we do our 3D printing. We can't print something that's inside out. It just is not going to work because the machine has to do a whole bunch of math and create some calculations to figure out how we're going to actually design this in the real world. So be very cautious whenever you see that blue. I'll show you a little bit later videos how we can remedy and deal with that, but that is generally a bad sign. We don't want things inside out, like so. So I'm going to go backwards there. And you'd want to make sure if you wanted to have a post coming out of there that you were to, create it properly, or pull it out on that side. Again, be careful that you're not mistaking those bluey grays for the shadows that happens when you kind of are orienting that. You'll see they go away as we rotate around. All right, final tool here to look at for today's one, and then I'll give you a little task, would be the Move tool. The Move tool allows us to grab, not necessarily push or pull, but although sometimes it works that way, but we can not just do faces, we can also grab corners and edges and move them around. And you'll see that SketchUp tries to keep the geometry working and realistic. So we can move things in a really interesting way. And it's not always just extruding them. We can pull them around and we can reshape things like so with the Move tool. We can also, if we select the whole thing, now be careful also when you drag around, sometimes you miss stuff. So you can also, with our selection tool, triple click. That will ensure all the connected things are selected. We can then use our Move tool and actually move a full object, pick it up and kind of put it somewhere else if we want to. And then let's delete that again. It's getting a little too complicated, so I'm going to start with a more basic one here. So this Move tool is really powerful. As I said, you can shrink that like that, and we can start creating some wedges. Or if, say, we were to grab a line, and notice that SketchUp really wants to help me out with what are called these inference points here. It's going to try and tell me a little bit where the ends are, where the middles are. Even if I drag to the middle of something, this usually works better with circles. We could figure out where things are nice and evenly. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to create a line down the middle. Also notice if I'm in the right orientation, it switches to red here, it switches to green going this way, or blue, sorry, green going this way, or blue coming. There's my green, my red, and my blue straight up and down. Oh, try and get it there. There we go. Now we're on the blue axis, so I'm coming straight up and down. Handy to know. So if I make a line in the middle here, and then I could grab my Move tool, I can actually pull that up to start to create some interesting new shapes and things like that. And this would be a great little activity for you to make a little tiny house or something like that using some of the tools. You could build some doors using rectangles. Oh, didn't grab that. Draw some windows, try a chimney. So do a little dollhouse or something like that for your first little activity in SketchUp. You've got some of the basics and just play around and see how it works.